Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niv'borei l'chaim l'chaim l'bracha. Afrei l'chem Purim, everybody. Happy Purim. It's Purim auf der Welt. It's a world full of Purim. And today we need to celebrate the holiday. We celebrate now by learning Chassidus, but the 4 particular mitzvahs for the holiday, you know what we'll mention afterwards, all those mitzvahs. Okay, we continue with the Maimer, the Purim Maimer. So, God is knocking on our door and says, open up your heart. Because our heart is always open. The depths of our heart is always open for the divine, for God, for godliness in our lives. And the first thing is to recognize that. That's your inner truth. Now that you recognize, you can now find that inner truth of how the divine is something very real. So the first thing is achaisi. There's 4 levels, 4 dimensions of the relationship: sister, friend, dove, and then pure one. Sister means an inherent relationship between siblings. We have an inherent relationship with God because we have a piece of God in our soul. So to open up your heart is to recognize the first level, after recognizing that, yes, I want something more than just, well, let's not go into that. We want something more divine, more real, more authentic. What's really me? And really me, I have the Ava Mitzvah, the hidden love of God in my soul. But because of my body, an animal soul that covers up on it, I don't live with it. It's not real for me. Chesi means that I come to recognize that after I've opened up His chuli, after the knock from heaven, knocking on our soul, I recognize that I have an inherent connection with God, and I can recognize God within the world. Then that allows me to recognize that the true nature of the world is God creating it. His word is animating the world. It's His will that animates the world. Just like my will is what brings out any power within me. Meaning, I want to raise my hand, I raise my hand. I want to, have a sip of coffee. L'chaim. I have a sip of coffee. Right. So God wills the world into being. Right. So, likewise, this world is animated from God's will, so He wills it. And just like in us, because we're created, the image of God, so we can understand how God runs the world. When I have when I do good, right? So that good is expressed in this world, and and it's outside of me, right? Today, you have to give matanos le'evyonim, you have to give money to the poor so they could celebrate the holiday, right? That action of my kindness is left in the world. My will, though, where does my will is not expressed in the world. It'll motivate me to do the act of kindness, but the will begins and ends with me. It doesn't leave me. It's just an expression of my soul that it is, but it doesn't leave me. So likewise, God, when he creates the world doesn't leave him because he desires it to create the world. So if God's will were to be removed, so is anything of this world. This idea of God as creator, that everything within this world is connected to him as he's creating it. Not that he did create it, he is now creating it. He's now desiring that the world should be. He now speaks the world into being. That is something that my animal soul can appreciate and understand. We can explain it to, right, that the true reality of everything in this world is God. So the true reality of this cup of coffee is divine, is God's will that it exists. So that will is that it should exist for a divine purpose. So today I drink this coffee, so it gives me more of a little wake up, chaim. Yesterday being a fast day, I didn't drink the coffee because it wasn't his will. Just like my will now is to have the coffee, likewise God's will, who animates the coffee, right? I'm just assuming he wants me to have the coffee now, but that's not his command, right? Can't say that that's his will, per se. His will is that, but let us assume, let's just use that by way of metaphor, right? So, so it exists only as an expression of the divine will. So you can explain that, that's not something just merely a godly thing. That's something anybody, with their animal soul, which the animal soul is seeking survival. So I could seek survival merely by the physical reality of a coffee, or I could seek survival that when I explain that this coffee is really exists because of the divine will, and therefore there's a divine intent, right? Either to embrace it today, and yesterday to not embrace the coffee. By way of example, so the animal soul can appreciate that. That this is the nature of the world. And therefore, even though the way of the animal, in general, if you notice, humans are on 2 feet because we could look down and be like an animal looking down. because an animal on 4 feet only looks down. They don't pick up their head to heaven. They just keep their head down so they could find what they need for survival below them, right? But we have the choice that we could look to heaven, and we could, and rather than fulfilling the desire of the animal of me, I can fulfill the desire of the heavens within me, within creation. Here we're talking within creation. So, but what's beautiful is that when the animal in me gets it, that real survival is connection to the divine, that's a game changer. So I don't need to survive on an animal level. In other words, I don't have to, on an animal level, I'm competing. Animals are competing for the next lunch. Animals are competing for, who's going to survive, who's going to be stronger, who's going to be, more. And so we can try to emulate the animal, which we naturally do, right? To have more, be more, right? But we're never satisfied because we're only feeding the animal the way the animal's looking down. But the animal in me can look up, and it can be fed by something more authentic and more real, what really I am deep down, right? A piece of God in me. The animal can appreciate and understand that is a greater form of survival, a greater form of not really survival, but thriving ultimately. So the animal in me can get that, right? That God is the source of, right? And the animal instinct is we live with our senses. We live with just the way in the five senses they based on that I'm going to have my feelings. Based on that I'm going to have my perception, right? And that's going to be my reality. So I perceive the coffee only in a physical manner, and therefore my reality from that perspective is I need this for survival of me. Everything is the way you are experiencing it from your senses, and based on that will feed you emotionally and cognitively. But then, as we know, when we live that way, we're never satisfied, we're never really happy. But when we realize and we understand, and the animal in me can understand that there's a greater reality, that I don't have to see the way things are in the physical eye because of the way my physical eye perceives it, or the way I hear something. But there's the mind's eye, that I can now understand in my mind's eye the idea that God is what is animating everything that I'm perceiving in my physical eye, that there's a greater truth, a greater reality, and that this world is completely bound up with the divine, right? Second. Right. And everything is bound up with God. And not since it's the will of God, just as my will doesn't leave me, right? It's only an expression of me. Right? My will brings me to pick up the cup of coffee, right? But that's an action already. But the will itself is only an expression of me, doesn't leave me. Likewise, God, that he creates the world out of his will, means it's only an expression of him. It doesn't leave him. It's of him. Oh, so the animal soul gets that. I'm not really separate from God. I'm really close to God. I'm really bound up in one with God. Right there is a message that I don't need to live on survival mode. Because if I'm each man for himself, right? Each body and each animal soul only lives for itself. But when the animal soul in me understands that, I don't have to live that way. I'm secure. I'm being bound up in one with God. The animal soul. So now my animal soul could become a little more refined because of its understanding of the authentic and inner truth of reality. And therefore, the animal soul in me can understand that God and world are not two separate entities, but God and world are one and the same. God is the world is God. On this level, right? That everything is nothing but an expression of the divine. Wow. So this is the first level. From here, this is the first level. Achesi. From here we go to a higher level. God willing, tomorrow, depending on how much we celebrate. So, a quick word, Purim. We're going to come to Rayasi, my friend, a higher level in an awareness and a divine connection, awareness of self, of who you are. It's Purim today, so for the Jewish people, you have mitzvahs to fulfill. One is to give to the poor, to Jewish poor, because it's for them to celebrate the holiday, tzedakah to people that are poor. You can do this if you don't have in your community. You could give online in Israel to the poor there. You could give, if you want. If anybody wants to send me, I'm giving to the poor here in Montreal and actually in Israel. But, so they could celebrate the holiday properly and that they should have the simcha of the holiday. That's one mitzvah. Doesn't have to be a huge amount. It's just, to give to two people. Then there is to give a man to a man, a woman to a woman, two edible foods. And this is for Jewish people because it's for them to celebrate the holiday, which is a mitzvah for a Jew to celebrate. It's a command for them. So to give man to man, woman to woman, preferably, if not, then to give a gift of two edible foods. So it could be a hamantashen, right? With a drink of sorts, or any kind of food item that's ready to eat. And then there is the mitzvah of hearing the Megillah, reading of the Megillah, again, as we had last night. And finally, Sudas Purim, a festive meal, which means making hamotzi on bread and celebrating and saying l'chaim and having a great Purim. All right, folks. Freilach Purim, God willing, we'll learn Chumash and Rashi after we're going to hear the whole Megillah again this morning here. So I don't imagine it'll be until around 9 o'clock that we will, 9 o'clock. And it could be, I don't know how long it's going to go, that it might be a bit later. Okay? All right. And if not, then it could be just we have Tanya today. I'm not certain.